All right, here we are back again, Addictively Speaking podcast. This is episode 8, and it's called Trauma. Now, trauma is usually something people don't like to talk about. People don't want to discuss things that cause them emotional distress and things like that. But in the addiction sense, I think a lot of trauma is the roots to all of these problems that people have with addiction. You're always trying to medicate or self medicate. So, trauma is going through a stressful and frightening, distressing event um, in your life. It can be talked about as emotional trauma, physical trauma. Um, these are all things that, you know, cause emotional damage to you. So basically, well, I was thinking, before you I always thought like the traumatic event in my life is what triggered what was causing my addiction. It was the thing that was, you know, was the cause of it. But now that I look back and kind of have a sober mind, I can look back and I can see that I always had the problem of moderation. I always had the issue. So when I drank, I always drank to an extreme. There was no moderate limit. I just kind of went full bore, straight ahead. And there was no trauma when I was, 14, 15, messing around and experimenting with alcohol. There was no trauma there. There was nothing, there was no reason, there was no self medication. It was just who I was. It was something in me genetically, DNA, whatever, whatever you believe. I know alcoholism is like inherited, it can be passed down. So, yeah, for me, it was there already. So I had that in me. Now I think my trauma, losing my friend, pushed me over the edge. It put me in a place where that was now personified. So my lack of moderation was now personified by this horrible situation in my life. Now, this horrible situation where I lost my best friend, it's at 21 years old, it's really difficult to process these emotions, like complex things that you're dealing with because I've never felt loss like that. I've never experienced that type of trauma before. It was really hard to wrap my head around that somebody who was a year younger than me was gone, like gone for good, gone. I literally was just I just couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't understand how that happens. Um, so it was really a struggle to kind of process all this information. And I didn't go to therapy and I didn't go to grief counseling because I was 21 years old and I was a kid and I just thought that I'd be able to figure it out, and I could not figure it out. I turned to alcohol to numb everything and to depress myself, like to because I was depressed. I needed something, to escape from everything, to escape from reality. So now in turn, I've started down this path where I'm out of control and I'm drinking and I'm causing more traumas to happen in my life. So I cause traumas by getting into huge fights. And I would, you know, I get into fights at bars and I get into fights with people at house parties. I would become so unstable and so unpredictable that I would cause more traumas, like losing my job and things like that, causing more issue in my life. So this one trauma then causes a whole bunch of other issues in my life. And we talked in the last episode about the ripple effect and how everything kind of ripples through your life then. So all this one trauma sent ripples through my life, causing other traumas to occur. Um, whether that be, I broke my hand in a fight because I was drunk and angry and filled with rage and not being able to process any of this information. And so I got into a fight, broke my hand, and that's a physical trauma. I physically traumatized myself by smashing my hand either off his head or the ground. Honestly, not really sure. Have no clue. but I did wake up with a bag of water on my hand, and it was all wrapped up, and I was like, "Shit, just broke my hand." So that had to get fixed. So then, obviously, I can't work, so I don't have a job because I can't go to work because my hand is busted, so that causes problems. Then I'm stressed because I don't know how I'm gonna pay the bills that I have coming up and all that kinda stuff, and adds so much stress and puts you deeper into this depression and this hole because of a trauma that you couldn't process, and that's that's where the spiral happens. You just kinda just go deep into the abyss, and then you're always trying to figure out how to get out, and sometimes you're so deep in that you can't. You're just struggling at the bottom there, just trying to figure out what's next. Are you gonna die? Are you gonna go to jail? And those are other things that are traumatizing because I remember, a vivid experience. I violated my probation, um, for DUI. I had a DUI. And I had probation, and I was on it for a year. All I had to do was not fuck up for a year, and I could not do it. I couldn't do it. I was 2 months away. What do I do? I go out. I get drunk. I go to McDonald's with some friends. I get into a huge fucking street fight, beat this kid, break my nose, end up in a holding cell, um, you know, which is causing more distress in my life. So I do that. I break my nose. I get arrested. I go back up on my charges for my DUI. Now they say, okay, we fucked up. We gave you a year. You couldn't do it. You fucked up. Now you got to go to jail. And I was like, oh, shit, I got to go to jail. I don't want to go to jail. What the fuck? So I end up having to go to jail. And I was only for 3 days. And people are like, oh, that's nothing. But it's a dehumanizing experience. You don't ever think about it. Like if you've never went to jail for anything, you don't know. You have no clue. You're like, "Oh, it was 3 days in a county jail." Yeah, it was also having to strip down naked and grab your ankles and cough, okay? It was sitting in a cell for 48 hours, you know, for 48 hours or yeah, for 36 hours. Excuse me, 36 hours. Um, and listening to people scream all night, just screaming shit. I still remember laying on this cot in this damp, dark jail cell and just listening to this guy scream shit cookies all night. That's all he screamed. Shit cookies for like 6 hours. Yeah, that shit affects you. I think about that all the time. Like I think about it and think, "Wow, that was fucked up." And there's people that are in that situation and that people go to county jails all the time and keep going in and out. And I just don't know how you could do that. Like, thank God I straightened my life out because that would have been me. I would have been in county jail all the time, guaranteed. I would have gotten into fights. I would have got myself locked up again, um, for sure. But yeah, it's one of those things that it sticks with me. I did a painting of it one time, and it was just all grays, and the only thing that was color was the orange jumpsuit that they put you in. And it's a really weird experience to have to be like shackled at your ankles and shackled at your hands, and then like paraded through, the cell block. And because I'm only in for 36 hours or whatever, or 72 or like whatever, so 3 days, right? So I'm only there for 3 days. So you're in seg. So you're just like locked in a cell for that whole time. You don't go out. You just sit in the cell with a lot of time to think about your situation and shit. And you would have thought like something like that, but you'd instantly come out and be like, "Oh shit, same for me. Maybe I need to change my life." That didn't happen for another like 7 years before I realized that I needed to change. Um, so there's like another traumatic experience. Like I had to go to jail. I experienced that. That's something that I will always have in my mind, you know? So these traumas, these big type of traumas, um, yeah, they can cause issues all throughout your life and even in recovery. So we talked about triggers in another episode, things that can trigger you, things that can, you know, get your anxiety up and work you up and stuff like that. Well, these huge traumas. I lost both of my parents while I was in recovery, and those are really difficult experiences. Like those that level of trauma, losing your mom and your dad is I can't even describe it. I mean, it's immeasurable. The loss. I still can't really talk about losing my mom and my dad because it's such an emotional experience. And obviously I went to grief counseling for this, because it is such a traumatic event. It is life changing. It's um, something that even if you know is going to happen at some point, you're never prepared for it to actually happen. And I knew coming into it what was happening with my mom, so I knew it was coming. But still, the amount of pain, and sadness you feel, that hole inside of you, is unbelievable, and you'll carry it with you. And grief counseling helps a bit, but still, I mean, I could have probably went to counseling for years and years and years, and still would not have been okay. I mean, I know I'm not okay now, but I try the best to manage those type of emotions and those things and those traumas in my life. And you know I bring them out when necessary and unpack them, and I have my cries and I have my emotional breakdowns, and then I pack it back up and I'll put it away, because I now know better in my life how to deal with these type of situations. Like when I was 21 and I lost my best friend, I didn't have these tools. I didn't have these coping skills. I didn't have uh, this set of things that I can utilize now to better cope with loss and to cope with such traumatic events. Because if if I didn't have these tools, I would be so easily triggered to kind of, you know, go back down that path, like feeling that loss and feeling that depressed and feeling that alone, losing a parent and then losing, you know, I lost my mom in 2015 and then lost my dad the following year. So, essentially like a year apart, I've lost both of my parents in one clip. And it's like, I was there for both of them. I was in the room with my mom, I was in the room with my father, when they passed. So that's like even harder because I feel like, my original trauma when I lost my best friend Ron, I I was there when it happened. I came, um, after he'd probably been gone for a little bit, but I was there and I held his head and I remember I think all these things are like burned into my brain, like it's that traumatic. Like I can remember it. I can look back at it and think I can look at it like a movie in my mind. And yeah, so like when you're sat there and you're in the room and it's like most people lose somebody and they're told about it. You hear about it. Um, Somebody calls you, or like it happens. There's a heart attack, and you know nobody's there. When I was there for all these experiences, so I feel like I've seen death kind of up close and personal, and like yeah, I've kind of been in the room with it several times, and that's to me is a really traumatizing thing. Like I saw my friend die. I watched him die. I saw his life leave his body. And the same with my mom and the same with my dad. I watched people pass away. And yeah, that's really tough thing to kind of like process in your mind is that I was holding my mom's hand and, watching her, leave this earth. And such a tough thing to do. And I thank God now. You know, I thank I thank God that I have like these skills and these things that help me get through that loss. Because losing my best friend and going through all that horrible shit with addiction and getting into recovery, you know, I'm actually thankful that I went through all that shit because like it gave me the tools I needed to survive these traumas. It gave me the stuff that I needed to get through because without those skills, without that, however shitty it was learning experience that my addiction was, it's given me the skills to be able to cope with those traumas. I mean, I don't think I would have been able to deal with it. If I was in the same situation, if I was still in addiction, I'd be dead. I wouldn't have dealt with it. I'd have killed myself. I would have I'd have went completely off the rails. I'd have either been so angry that I got into a huge fight and hurt somebody or hurt myself, or it would have just been an absolute shit show. So luckily, um, I had the skills to be able to cope with all this. And I think in addiction, a lot of addiction is exacerbated by people's traumas. People self-medicate and they do things to suppress these things that have happened that they don't talk about because it's not easy because people don't want to share that type of information with just anybody. I mean, and even like therapy and counseling. I mean, it's hard to find a good therapist. It's hard to find a good counselor that you can sit down and have a conversation with and not feel really funny about doing it or really self-conscious about exposing yourself because being vulnerable and being exposed is scary. Nobody wants to be kind of left out there naked for everyone to see or for somebody to look at you and maybe you think like, oh, are they judging me? Are they, yeah, like whatever the situation is, like, so I think I've had some good counselors through the years where I kind of felt like a good rapport, and I think I got a lot of shit off my chest that probably was built up over years, and I kind of figured some things out about myself, as a person and how I process things. And I do have a tendency to hold on to things. I do keep shit inside of me. I hold on to it. Um, I get angry because of it, um, which is a shitty thing, but it's kind of who I am, and I have to do better to deal with things like that. But it is difficult. It's a daily battle. Just like my recovery it's a daily thing. I work at it every single day. I do this podcast to help others. I'm just trying to share experience, share some knowledge, hopefully engage some people into getting into recovery or thinking about even getting counseling or just talking to somebody about the problems that they're having because there are underlying issues. It's not just, you know, plain and simple like, oh, one day you woke up and you thought, "Hey, I think I'm going to try heroin." Because it doesn't work like that. Like you don't just wake up one morning and go, "I'm going to be an alcoholic and I'm going to fuck up my entire life." It's not like that. And people will say, "Oh, addiction is it's not a disease, it's a choice, it's this, it's that." And, those people have no idea. You haven't been in those shoes, you haven't walked those miles. So you can't really judge people and say, "Oh, it's a choice." Yeah, it may have been a choice in a moment. You made a decision to have a drink or you made a decision to do a drug, but you didn't make a choice to fuck up your entire life. Like that wasn't you didn't decide that that's what you wanted to do. Nobody decides that willingly. Nobody goes, "Oh, things seem to be going well. I think I'll just, do so much cocaine that my nose bleeds for 4 days." Like nobody does that. I'm going to sell all my shit and do tons of drugs. Nobody wakes up and thinks that. Something happens, and then something happens. You make a decision, and then shit gets out of control. And then you change as a person. Your mind changes, and it makes these horrible decisions because you're in this place. And somebody that's not in this place shouldn't judge people who are, because you don't know what the experiences are. You don't know what it's like. And you should give these people a bit more of a chance and some hope, and to say, hey, listen, you can get better. You can do better. You can strive for success. You can get out of that hole. You can recover. And that's all I'm trying to do. So no matter what trauma has happened in your life, you can overcome it. You can seek help. There are tons of ways to get help. You can go to meetings, you can go to a counselor, and they might refer you to somebody to talk to about your addiction. There are all type of ways that you can sort these things out, and you can really get on the path to finding sobriety and dealing with these traumatic issues that you've self-medicated for years, or whatever the case may be. You can get help and you can get out of this. I promise you that. I'm living proof of it, that it is possible. So I just want to close this out by saying, take care of yourselves. If you are struggling, please reach out to friends, reach out to family, call somebody, get some help. And I can guarantee that if you get on the road to recovery, your life will be so much better. Um, I appreciate everybody who's out there listening, who's out there watching these videos on YouTube. I have a video that's almost up over 200 views. And to me, that is absolutely phenomenal, because the more people I reach and the more people I speak to and the more people that listen, even if one of those people is in this place that I'm talking about with addiction and they're struggling and they get help, all of this is worth it. So if you know somebody, if you have friends, you have family, share the videos, share the links, get on the web, get on Instagram, find me on YouTube, find me on Facebook, and just engage in the conversation. We're just here to help people. So I just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll be back with another episode as soon as possible. I'd like to thank ABJ, who's hooked me up with this beautiful platform on StreamYard. It's absolutely phenomenal. He's really hooked me up. I'm trying to take everything to the next level and become a bit more professional and give you guys good quality content. So ABJ, I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Big shout out to him. Big shout out to my boy Jamal Blunt, who's provided some music that's going to be added to the audio version of this. I still got to take some time and figure out how to add it to the video version. So yeah, man, doing big things. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, share, do everything you can. Find me on the socials, and let's just blow this thing up. Thank you guys. Have a great day.